Hey, so I just heard something that intrigued me enough to press record once again. Um, Let me get my thoughts in order. So, the Minnesota Timberwolves are interested in acquiring Ben Simmons. As you know, Ben Simmons has been a very hot topic on this channel over the last week and a half just because I've been very intrigued by his decline and how poorly he's played during these playoffs, and uh, also have just continuously been intrigued by facilitators in general. I think he's one of the better facilitators in the game. So, needless to say, I've always paid attention to him a little more than most. But he does have some glaring deficiencies, particularly from shooting the ball from the line and from, of course, being reluctant to shoot from three. So, he doesn't fit everywhere. But you do want to put him in a position to play with players that are along his age range, who have a lot of talent, players who could stretch the floor, guys who are high octane, who could really you know run loose in the fast break. And Minnesota checks off all the boxes. Um, Cat is a player who obviously shoots the ball, doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands all day long, but he does need somebody to set him up. And like Joel Embiid, obviously Cat can do similar things. This should not be that much of an adjustment for Ben Simmons to try to play with him. Now, some people would say if it didn't work with Embiid, why would it work with Cat? And I think that that's a reasonable conversation to have. But at the end of the day, wherever Ben Simmons goes, it's better for them to have a talented big man than not. When you consider what it is to be a basketball team in the NBA right now, would you prefer him play with somebody less talented at the center position? I think not. So let's try to keep that under control, because what will end up happening is once he gets to a team, you'll be saying, "Man, can we get him a center?" I mean, that's what's going to happen. So why not uh, transition from playing with one great center to the next? I think the fit could be intriguing depending on how much shooting they're able to retain. Now they're going to have to give up some things to get him, but looking at someone's trade tracker, seeing as how to make the numbers work, it looks like they don't have to give up anything really substantial. Maybe Ricky Rubio, McDaniels, obviously a plethora of picks, but they may be able to pull this off without even involving Malik Beasley or D'Angelo Russell. I don't know if those guys are free agents. I'm not certain, but if they can do that without giving up any of those guys, being that Ben Simmons' value is pretty low, they may be able to. We're looking at a situation where that's an absolute no-brainer. If you're the Timberwolves, you're hoping to God you could pull that off. And whatever problems Ben Simmons has, you don't care. You just want to pull that off. And that's another thing. Because Ben Simmons' value is so low, there could be a bidding war for his services at a low level. Do you understand what I'm saying? Which could drive his price back up to actual range. It's a really intriguing type of thing when you think about it, but nevertheless, it looks like we have a suitor. We have a team that wants Ben Simmons, and from what I understand, they want him bad. And I can see why. When you consider that fast break with Anthony Edwards and Ben Simmons, oof, dangerous. When you think about the type of shooting that Malik Beasley and D'Angelo Russell provide, oof, dangerous. Um, and then of course, again, the dynamic with him and Cat should not be that difficult because uh, Cat needs a playmaker like him. Um, Although he doesn't need one necessarily because they have Ricky Rubio. So I'm not saying they don't have one, but I'm saying he would require one for him to be his best self, a pass first player. And that's what Ben Simmons is. Most definitely a pass first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth player. So, and that's what Ben needs to get back to. He needs to get back to being able to put the ball in his own, having the ball in his hands, and being able to dish it out to others. That's who he is. That's how he shines. That's what opens up everything else for him. That's how he's able to get drives down the lane and feel confident, get his little hook shots up, and get an open court and hammer and all that good stuff that he does. It's because he's able to get his rhythm off of passing the rock to others. And see, that's what you. It's important that when you're assessing players, you got to understand what their thing is. Some guys need to block shots. Some guys need to rebound. Some guys need to shoot threes. Some guys need to be able to cross guys over. Whatever their thing is, if they're able to get into that, that can usually get them going. And for a guy like him, uh, it's definitely passing the rock. So that's what I want to see, him get to a team where he can get the ball to shooters and not really be looked to score the ball at all. But as most of the analysts have said, and as I've said on this channel, he's going to have to shore up his free throw shooting. Now, a lot of people say he needs to learn how to shoot a jumper, shoot his three-point shot. I think that he can get away with not having a three-point shot for a little while. He's been able to get away with it, but the thing that he cannot get away with is not being able to shoot free throws. Because if he's reluctant to shoot free throws, obviously he's going to be hesitant like he was in these playoffs. We don't need a repeat performance of that ever again. So if anything, it's not about shooting the three ball. That's a whole nother hurdle for him. Right now, he just needs to become playable again. And in order for that to happen, he needs to get his free throw shooting under control. What he did was outside of himself in terms of this past series and how poorly he shot. He's not a good free throw shooter, but that was not normal. That was completely outside of himself. That was the worst free throw shooting anyone's ever shot. So clearly, that's not how bad he is. And I refuse to be a prisoner of the moment. He was going through something psychologically in that situation and in that space, and we've seen it with other players. This was just his version of it. But I think he was forced to see his own weaknesses, and he's forced to kind of be humbled in a way that he had never been humbled in his life in this past playoff series. And if this doesn't change you, I don't know what does. And I think his reputation has been that of a person who's been arrogant, someone who's been paid, who doesn't really think much of kind of taking the game seriously, someone who's deeply in his head about shooting the ball. So it's a lot going on, and when people will try to assess who they believe Ben Simmons to be. But at the end of the day, one thing's for certain: all of his weaknesses were flat out laid out for the whole world to see, and he made a decision to not play in Australian basketball for the Olympics so that he could work on his game. And that tells me that something clicked, something changed. So he realized something about himself that maybe hadn't been there for him to see beforehand. So I think we're going to see a better Ben Simmons. I do believe he will be traded despite having that crazy contract. And I think if he can get on the Timberwolves, he'll love being there because he's going to be playing with a bunch of young talent. There's going to be enough shooting there to kind of make it so that he doesn't have to necessarily focus as much on the shot. Because remember, the problem with the Philadelphia 76ers is that they've always had problems getting shooting on that floor. And for 4 years, they've been trying to find shooting, and they finally got it this season. So it's one of those situations where it's like, before Seth Curry came along, they were just completely deficient with that. So it was incumbent upon Ben Simmons to shoot more, and because he wasn't, it was really, really difficult. Obviously, Joel Embiid is at a point where I'm sure he would rather play with someone who can kind of help him offensively a bit more than Ben can. I think we've seen as far as they want to go with one another. I think it's time to move on for certain. So it's a good situation as any, especially if they keep the shooting. Now, if Minnesota does not have a plan for Ben Simmons, this could definitely be bad. Obviously, Minnesota is a very, very bad franchise. We're not going to sugarcoat that on this channel. They have one of the worst records of any team ever. They are bad. They stay bad consistently. So you don't want to see Ben Simmons entering a bad situation. But what makes me say differently in this case is the fact that they will be so very, very, very talented between the three players that they have there, that their culture should just change by default. It really doesn't matter what uniform you put Cat, Anthony Edwards, and Ben Simmons in. They're going to make an impact. That's a big three. Whether you know it or not, that's a big three, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe Ben Simmons needs to come back around with his confidence in his game. But once he starts figuring out and reminding himself who he is, start working on some of the things that he needs to work out, this is a guy that the game comes naturally to Ben Simmons. We not forget. If people need to go watch highlights, I would encourage you to do that. Because me personally, I haven't forgotten who Ben Simmons is. Not at all. It's just that he hasn't improved. But who he was in the beginning was already good enough to be an all-star. So don't lose sight of that. because it seems like he has. But just because he has doesn't mean the rest of us do. A lot of us get caught being prisoner of the moment as it pertains to players. We do it all the time. But when a person is naturally gifted, you're seeing it with Paul George right now. All they got to do is overcome whatever they're going through in that moment. The talent will continue to carry them regardless of what mindset they're in, for as long as their body allows them to go through it. As long as their body can hold up, people go through phases. So I'm not as strong as I was maybe 6 weeks ago, but I'll be stronger 6 weeks from now. And whatever it is I'm good at will be reflecting upon that no matter what, because the talent's going to bleed through. But if I'm right, you're going to get the best version of me. And I think the same about certain other players as well who are going through things. Paul George, we've seen it with Meta World Peace. We've seen it with so many other players who've had to deal with things internally, you know what I mean? But they're so talented that over time, you forget about that. They forget about their issues and they just get back to playing ball. And, need we not forget that Ben Simmons is already having a fantastic career. So, was this a bad year? For sure. Did he take some steps back? Some necessary ones. In my mind, no different than a stock that needs correction. Now it's going to be on a more healthy trajectory at this point because of that correction. I think that's what happened with Ben, man. We're going to get a better Ben Simmons going forward. But he's going to need shooters around him. So that's why I keep mentioning names like Malik Beasley. I know he's had some issues off the court. I don't know if those have been settled or not. But he's so very and very important to what it is that Ben Simmons is going to be able to do freely, because he's the best shooter on that team outside of D'Angelo Russell. He's a spot-up shooter that doesn't necessarily need the ball, but can do things with it, take pressure off of guys when they're not having good nights. He's a guy that's secretly turning into an all-star caliber player without any recognition whatsoever. And I just been watching him from afar, and I know he's on this team. If he's a free agent, re-sign him, because Ben Simmons, he's going to be one of Ben Simmons' main weapons outside of them stars. I guarantee it. Also, I would say prepare to play Ben Simmons at the 4 spot. I know that can be a little tricky because he will clog the paint for Cat, and that's kind of weird. So D'Lo is also a weird fit because D'Lo plays best with the ball in his hands and facilitates as well. I don't know what you do there. Maybe D'Lo moves on. Maybe you get rid of him in a different deal to kind of free up the ball for Ben Simmons, but then that takes away some of your shooting. So D'Lo has value. You can definitely get something for him. Maybe you don't need to give him up. He does fit with Ben at the shooting guard spot, but it's just a weird, funky kind of lineup. It gets weird there. So I don't know if that's a good fit. Jared Culver, I would imagine, is going to be involved in the move to Philly or in a separate place if they involve a different team. In the trade tracker that I saw, it looked like he was involved. So we'll see if he's in there just to make the numbers work. So, yeah, man, I expect picks to be moved around as well. Ben Simmons is not going to draw the type of picks that maybe he once would have, but because he's a young player with some cachet, I think Philly's probably going to try to get a pick out of that. We'll see. I like the fit, man. I like the fit. I think Minnesota should do this. If they can get it done without giving up anything that they don't want to give up, do it. But I do believe that we're going to be shocked in finding out how many teams actually want Ben Simmons despite some of his struggles. I think you're going to see more suitors. I think it would be smart for other teams to buy low on Ben Simmons. Because, like I said, we've seen him play well. We know who he can be. If he strikes out, if he's never a good player again, you're not going to give up the farm for him. Yeah, his contract is crazy, but he's a fantastic defender. So even if he sucks offensively, you can still use him in spot-up situations to make his value almost make sense for you, etc., etc., etc. So buy low. Don't give up the farm, but definitely make a move. And if you're Minnesota, do that for sure. Anyway, I think you guys got what I'm trying to say here. My name is BDF44. I'm out.